Hello, everybody, and welcome to News Without Prejudice. We are so happy you could join us. If you have a moment, please click that like or that share button. Send us to someone you know who might be interested in the latest legal news. We are excited to get into this, and we are so excited to come from a new space today. How are you doing, John?
I'm doing fantastic. So this is now Hemmat Studios.
Oh, yeah.
We're still working on decorating it. It's a little bit of a liminal space, but I've got this cool lamp on my right and this cool thermostat on my left.
Oh, yeah.
It's a new space for us. We have a new sound engineer because we're bringing everything in-house. We've had so much fun doing this. We've had such a great response.
Yeah.
Additionally, we have this duck. I'm very excited about the duck.
Shout out to my duck.
I'm less excited about the news today. You want to jump right into it?
Oh, man, there's some chaos going on. Tell me what's up.
Okay, so the first thing is, those of you aware, Trump and various individuals have been deporting alleged Venezuelan members of the Tren de Aragua
Yes.
gang.
And MS-13.
Yeah, and MS-13, and basically gangs that the government claims are invading the United States. And I mean that very literally because he's proclaiming unilateral action under what's called the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, which is a law that permitted Japanese internment. It permits the executive branch during wartime, which allowed for detention and deportation of foreign nationals from countries actively invading the United States. That's the key, is that it's a literal wartime power. It is being used to justify unilateral deportations. Now, Judge Boasberg of the D.C. Circuit Court has been basically trying to stop Trump in a spy versus spy games of constitutional brinkmanship.
Yeah.
Ordering.
We're more right. No, we're more right.
Yes.
No, we're more right.
And he lit the latest, death trap for the Trump administration Monday, April 7th by midnight. The individuals who had been deported to an El Salvadorian super prison called the Terrorism Confinement Center returned to the United States for judicial review and a full hearing. The Supreme Court intervened and actually overturned and stayed the temporary restraining order. The court has a 6-2-3 conservative majority. Conservative Justice Amy Coney Barrett and the court's 3 liberals dissented from the majority opinion. There was an unsigned opinion that came out last night. The Supreme Court announced that stopped the punitive temporary restraining order, and it sides with the administration but puts limits on how deportations can occur, the emphasizing that judicial review is ultimately required. Quote, detainees must receive notice after the date of this order that they are subject to the removal under the Act, Alien Enemies Act.
Great. How useful is that to
The
them?
notice must be afforded within a reasonable time and in such a manner that will allow them to actually seek habeas relief in proper venue before such removal occurs.
Okay, I see.
But these detainees who brought this specific suit, because remember, the Maryland father is in Venezuela or is in El Salvador. These detainees that brought this petition to the United States are in Texas. So the Supreme Court said this was not a review of whether or not the Supreme Court thought that the Alien Enemies Act was the right thing to use to deport to deport people. They were just saying, is venue proper here? Right. And they say, no, venue is improper in the District of Columbia because the detainees are all in Texas. Now, for those of you that do not know, Texas courts, I believe they're the Fifth Circuit, not friendly to immigrants just generally. And in fact, that is reflected nationwide. In some places, if you go in for an immigration hearing, you've got like an 5 to 8% chance of removal. In other places, you've got like an 85-90% chance of removal to deportation. So it varies wildly throughout the country.
Wow. If only that's what the hearing was meant to decide, whether that should happen or what. Sorry, whatever.
I should also clarify what a habeas petition is.
Yeah,
Habeas corpus is Latin for produce the body, which in practice just means it's a way for imprisoned individuals to challenge their detention or deportation, confinement of some kind, depending on the context. But the Supreme Court says that we can only challenge those in this ruling. You can only challenge those for yourself. So there's no group habeas. You can't have like a class habeas action.
Sure. So we can't make the case that 100% of these folks should be returned.
But I think the big takeaway that people are missing from this is that it does not help the people already deported.
Right.
They only said people moving forward, and it puts the people already in El Salvador in a difficult position because the government's argument is that, hey, this may have been a mistake, but we don't have jurisdiction over him anymore because he's in El Salvador. Oopsie, right?
Oopsie.
Which was the Trump administration's position, which is abhorrent.
Yeah, I've got a quote here from Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. We suggest that the judge contact President Bukele because we are unaware of the judge having jurisdiction or authority over the country of El Salvador.
Yes. So the Trump administration is paying El Salvador, so they can request his return. This was a sort of a splitting hairs dancing game they were playing with Judge Boasberg, buying time for the Supreme Court to step in and help them, and the Supreme Court did. The Supreme Court delivered. So it does not help the people already detained, and it also does not help um, people who are removed so quickly they cannot file a habeas petition. So basically, the Supreme Court tacitly said if you can get them out of the country fast enough, they're good. Because if venue isn't proper in El Salvador and it's not proper in anywhere but where you are held, it incentivizes the Trump administration to basically put them on a plane as quickly as possible, send them out of the country, and then the government just has to say, "Whoops, they're already gone." Right?
Yeah, because there's very little consequences
Yes.
happening already.
So the Supreme Court did say, "Hey, you got to give people a hearing," but whether or not that will actually mean anything, we'll have to see. We'll keep you updated. I think the other thing is that the Trump administration has continued a campaign of tariffs. Yes, from Liberation Day, there have been no reversals from the Trump administration on Monday. The Nasdaq and the Dow Jones Industrial Average on this April 7th actually shot upwards when a random guy said, "Hey, they're pausing tariffs for 90 days." And then it came out that was fake news, and then they plunged again. Something like over $10 trillion in value have been wiped out of the U.S. stock market over the last couple of days. And I think the big news this week is that global markets are tumbling now, because now the Nikkei, the Japanese stocks and future tradings on Sunday all started tumbling. We have an incredibly interconnected economy, and that means when a central piece like the United States falls, everyone else does. And I actually want to sort of play a statement put out by the Prime Minister of Singapore, because it's titled "The Implication of U.S. Tariffs." So he sat down and actually proclaimed this in English, so that the world can read too, and it's a very illuminating listen. So
Beautiful. So for our video listeners, we're going to have this up on screen for you here. For our audio listeners, you'll be able to hear it. Feel free to go search for it if you want to watch it yourself.
My fellow Singaporeans, I've said before that the world is changing in ways that will disadvantage small open economies like Singapore. Some had previously questioned this assessment, but the recent Liberation Day announcement by the US leaves no room for doubt. It marks a seismic change in the global order. The era of rules-based globalization and free trade is over. We are entering a new phase, one that is more arbitrary, protectionist, and dangerous. For decades, the US was the bedrock for the free market economies of the world. It championed free trade and led efforts to build a multilateral trading system, anchored by clear rules and norms, where countries could achieve win-win benefits through trade. This WTO system brought unprecedented stability and prosperity to the world, and to the US itself. To be clear, the system is not perfect. Singapore and many others have long called for reform, to update the rules and to make the system better. But what the US is doing now is not reform. It is abandoning the entire system it had created. Its new approach of reciprocal tariffs, country by country, is a complete rejection of the WTO framework. The US has placed Singapore in the lowest base tier with a tariff of 10%. So the direct impact on us may be limited for now, but there are wider and more profound consequences. If other countries adopt the same approach as the US, abandoning the WTO and trading only on their own preferred terms, country by country, it will spell trouble for all nations especially small ones like Singapore. We risk being squeezed out, marginalized, and left behind. We can also expect a strong global response to America's tariffs. Singapore has decided not to impose retaliatory tariffs, but other countries may not exercise the same restraint. The likelihood of a full-blown global trade war is growing. The impact of the higher tariffs plus the uncertainty of what other countries may do next will weigh heavily on the global economy. International trade and investments will suffer, and global growth will slow. Singapore will take a bigger hit than others because of our heavy reliance on trade. The last time the world experienced something like this was in the 1930s. Trade wars escalated into armed conflict and eventually the Second World War. No one can say how the current situation will unfold in the coming months or years. But we must be clear-eyed about the dangers that are building up in the world. Global institutions are getting weaker. International norms are eroding. More and more countries will act based on narrow self-interest and use force or pressure to get their way. This is the harsh reality of our world today. We will stay vigilant. We will build up our capabilities. We will strengthen our network of partnerships with like-minded countries. We are more ready than many other countries with our reserves, our cohesion, and our resolve. But we must brace ourselves for more shocks to come. The global calm and stability we once knew will not return anytime soon. We cannot expect that the rules which protected small states will still hold. I'm sharing this with you so that we can all be mentally prepared, so that we will not be caught off guard. Let us not be lulled into complacency. The risks are real and the stakes are high. The road ahead will be harder. But if we stay resolute and united, Singapore will continue to hold its own in this troubled world.
Isn't that a fantastic clip? That's a long clip, so I appreciate everybody listening in to parts or all of that. But the Republic of Singapore, it's an island country. It has it has a relatively small population. It has a history of being a former British colonial state, so it's a parliamentary representative democracy with 9 political parties. Um, it has a GDP of 879.9 billion, which is only about the size of a U.S. state. Um, but it's a powerhouse because it relies almost completely on global trade. It's located directly along a lot of global trade routes with between Asia, India, and Europe. So it's perfectly placed for resupply and exchange. Um, and it only has a couple million, a relative handful million of people living in Singapore. And so Singapore is completely reliant on the global status quo of trade, which is why they have not they would collapse their own economy to put almost any tariffs on anyone, generally speaking. And countries like Singapore are set to lose more than anyone else because they're reliant on the World Trade Organization that the U.S. helped build. He put it very eloquently.
Yeah, he really did. That was a beautiful, beautiful piece of speech, I suppose. Beautiful. One of the most beautiful TikToks I've ever seen, that's for sure. Very well put. I appreciate his use of words like restraint and cohesion and things like that. That sounds much better to me. You know, of course these are very, very, very different things, but did you hear Nintendo announce the Switch 2? And they announced also that some games would be up to $90 for the Switch 2. And a lot of folks out there that I've heard are really angry about this, and they're thinking, why is Nintendo being so greedy? And this is going to set the standard around the gaming industry. Now, all games are going to be almost $100, and no one can afford to play any games anymore. But the point is, the US I see as doing the exact same thing as Nintendo here of, well, we can get away with it, so we're just gonna take all this extra money from all these tariffs and everyone else can just suck it.
Uh,
That's that's what I see going on here.
the this is this perfect tactic that can work in the short term, but will hurt in the long run because eventually people will no longer. The benefit of the United States is that the government is stable, right? A fiat currency is based on the good faith and credit of the government that backs it, and if we are not good partners, no matter what prices we pursue, um, no one will want to invest here, and so in the long run, we will be cut out or minimized in most people's supply chains, which would be very bad for everyone, including the manufacturing businesses that Trump claims to want to bring back. But I wanted to point out something that Scott Galloway pointed out on his most recent episode of Raging Moderates, is that like when you provide service-based businesses, the value return profit margin to GDP is much higher than a manufacturing company. So like when a software company sells software, that's like a 90, making services, providing a product, or maybe a financial advisor. Those businesses tend to have, 40 to 60% margin on some things. We're basically exporting knowledge and refinement. That's what a service business does, a service economy does. Yeah, exporting data. But like an Aston Martin or like a Ferrari sports car, the things hard tangible goods that are manufactured, the GDP margin on a good like that is maybe 10%. And that's the sort of economy that we apparently want to go back to.
Apparently.
But I know the consumers don't want to go back to that because it's never been illegal to buy American goods. Like American made t-shirts, those are the $90 t-shirts you hate buying. Um, and it's been very challenging for me to watch this happen because I know that the consumers do not want. We're basically punishing Americans for buying things where they want to buy things from.
Yes, and we're punishing Singaporeans.
Yes, and other
For
countries like
existing.
them. Yeah, exactly. There's only just under 6 million people in Singapore and Hong Kong. I want to say like
It's a lot of people.
7 million of 7.5 million.
And the size of Singapore is like the size of Rhode Island or something
Yeah,
like that,
it's
right?
very tiny.
Yeah.
They're punching way above their weight class because they have relied on global trade. They're a refinement and exchange economy rather than a manufacturing company. They don't have the space to be or the resources or the raw materials to be a manufacturing industry. And I think the coming era will be one dominated by juggernauts like the United States, India, China, and Russia, who have the geography to attempt to make their own circular economy, even though it would not be efficient. It's what we're trying to do. So I'm concerned for the road ahead, and we'll just have to see if this backs off. I'm hoping the Trump administration caves to political pressure soon. I know that this has been a very risky gamble. I think we'll just have to see how it plays out.
Yeah, this is only time will tell, folks.
Yes.
Stay with us. We'll keep on this news and hopefully we don't go broke.
Yes. Well,
and by we, I mean everybody.
inquiring minds want to know. Thank you for joining us for News Without Prejudice. We're going to be keeping an eye on these various stories. I think Judge Boasberg has got his work absolutely cut out for him. We are taking a look. We'll be uploading in a day or two. We're still working on our new publication schedule now that we control all our own hardware. Yes, be patient with us. Go to gossipwithoutprejudice.com. Pledge as little as $5 a month. Brings you closer to keeping us in business and gives us our undying gratitude if you want to support our work. Podcast supported by Hemmat Law, whether or not you want to join a really cool law firm or if you want to hire someone for a family law matter, go to hemmatlaw.com/GWP. And we will be in touch very soon. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Bye.